lot of our patients are fast eaters, don't chew enough. And the first step in the process of digestion is the chewing, the mouth part. The saliva releases salivary amylase that begins to break down the food. It's an enzyme. And if you don't chew enough and you swallow your food too quickly, you can have digestive issues, gas, pain, bloating, things like that, because you haven't sufficiently digested food. So chewing evenly on both sides, chewing sufficiently, chewing with the lips closed. And we teach like the motion of chewing and how the tongue should go as well to promote good muscle development.
Have you ever heard of Fletcherism or Horace Fletcher by any chance?
No.
So
I'll write it down.
Horace Fletcher, also known as the Great Masticator, was this health influencer, you could say, from the early 1900s. And he went on this massive tour of the whole world teaching people thorough mastication. And he swore that like the root cause of so many illnesses that were emerging at that time was that people weren't thoroughly masticating their food. They were swallowing it whole and then basically putting a huge burden on their body to do the work of digestion that the teeth and the saliva were supposed to do in the mouth.
That makes sense. Like, yeah, I mean, you find a lot of our patients are, I have them eat in the evaluation to see what's going on. And I mean, they're swallowing food whole. They're chewing with just the front teeth, not on the back molars. And then all of a sudden they just burp or get the hiccups. And you're like, well, you're swallowing air. Like it's a whole process. But yeah, mastication builds and forms bone. That is key to our jaws.
So my theory about why Horace Fletcher was even necessary at that time was that jaws were starting to collapse in the early 1900s, and people were compensating by swallowing their food whole, like so many of us do, including myself with these lingual braces. I find myself all the time rushing food down because it's so uncomfortable for me to chew in, with all this metal in my mouth. So I think people were like forgetting how to chew at that time because jaws were collapsing. And then you needed someone like Horace Fletcher to come in and remind everyone about how to chew naturally. So he had this idea of masticating the food until it swallowed itself. And the way he taught people to chew properly was to tell them to extract all of the flavor from the food. So you basically keep it in your mouth until all of the flavor comes out. And then what you find is that the food swallows itself. The tongue will just naturally work things back to the back of the mouth and then lift up and take the food down. You don't even actually intentionally swallow. It just happens by itself as you extract flavor.
That's interesting. And probably it's kind of liquefied. So reflexively, you just automatically swallow. And it also probably promotes like some mindfulness while we're eating, because we're probably, checking Facebook, doing work on the computer, talking to friends while we're eating. And it's nice to be quiet and chew with your mouth closed and just chew and think about the flavor and process the food. That's probably a healthier, better way to eat. Mindful eating.
Yeah. Yeah. And he described it also as extremely blissful. So he said that when you chew properly and you focus on the flavor of the food, it's like, he called it, his book was called like the New Epicureanism, which is to say like this new practice of heightened pleasure.
Yeah. Makes sense.
So, yeah.
Interesting.